the Detroit Lions have to make a decision in less than 24 hours from now whether they are going to make a trade at the NFL trade deadline for whatever position. Now, there's obviously 3 different positions that come up to mind when you think about what the Detroit Lions are going to do at the trade deadline, if anything. That is defensive end, offensive line, of a guard or tackle, or a defensive back, cornerback, or a safety. Now, the reports have came out that we were looking at defensive end help and safety help particularly. Now, people also just said DB and defensive line help, but when they have singled it to a certain position at those 2, it has been defensive end and safety. I don't know why we would want a safety. Thomas Harper is a very good depth safety and can fill in as a starter for a couple games if needed. And you got a veteran in Avonte Maddox who can hold his own back there as well. So I don't really know why we're looking at a safety like that. But cornerback is a conversation for sure. There are a couple guys on the markets available that could fit the Detroit Lions. Alontae Taylor, according to NFL rumors on Twitter, I don't always go off of them. I'm not going to bring it up because I'm not even going to rely off them anymore. But they do put out some true information. Not that much, but 33% of the time they do. Because the other 67% that they put out is never really known if it comes true because you never see any other sources put it out there. But we have reportedly reached out to the Seahawks about cornerback Tariq Woolen. But it sounds like that they are not going to move Tariq Woolen and they plan to keep him. The Seattle Seahawks, which makes sense. They're in one of the best positions of any team in the whole entire NFL right now. So I don't know why they would trade their players. Those are some players that are available at the cornerback market. Another player at the cornerback market that is available is Cam Taylor-Britt from the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, there's a chance that we reached out to them as Diana Rossini, the NFL insider, also put out that we have reached out to the Bengals about either Logan Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Trey Hendrickson, all 3 of them, or 1 or 2, or none of those. Well, obviously we reached out to one of those, or one of those players. So I'm assuming we probably reached out for sure to Trey Hendrickson and potentially Cam Taylor-Britt. I don't know why we would reach out to Logan Wilson, so I'm assuming it's just Cam Taylor-Britt and Aidan Hutchinson. So there's a chance we've reached out to Cam Taylor-Britt. So there's just some guys that are on the cornerback market that could make sense that won't cost a whole lot. Specifically Cam Taylor-Britt and Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor probably cost a 3rd or 4th round pick. And Cam Taylor-Britt, I'm assuming will be anywhere from about a 5th or 6th round pick. So, Lions, their draft capital, let's see if I think I got it pulled up, if I'm not mistaken. Do I? Yes, I do. This is our draft picks for the 2026 and 2027 NFL season, according to Sports. I believe you guys can see this, but if you can't, you're going to have to zoom in and pause the video. This is our 2026 draft picks. Our own picks are rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5. We acquired a 7th round pick from the Cleveland Browns, and we traded our original 3rd round pick for Isaac TeSlaa in this past year's draft, and our 3rd round compensatory pick that we got for Aaron Glenn in this year's past draft to move up for Isaac TeSlaa. We also traded our 6th round pick this year to get Zadarius Smith from last season, and 2 seasons ago when we traded to get Riley Patterson back before we had Jake Bates and Badgley, we traded a 7th round pick to the Jaguars to get Riley Patterson. So we did not have our original 7th or original 2 3rd round picks or our 6th round pick. But we are expected to get per over the cap, which is a legit website. That and SpotCheck are the best cap websites out there. They currently project to give us a compensatory 2026 4th round pick from all losses and free agency this past season. I thought it was only going to be a compensatory 7th round pick for a Fatu Melifonwu, but apparently from all the other moves and stuff like that, and our players getting a lot more money compared to us signing players getting a lot of money that we gave them, we are projected to get a 4th round compensatory pick, which is a big upgrade over a 7th round pick. So our picks that we now have in the 2026 NFL draft is a 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, 4th round pick, 5th round pick, a 6th round pick that we got for Tim Patrick that they did not include in here, and a 7th round pick from the Cleveland Browns that we got in the Zadarius Smith trade, along with a compensatory pick in 2026 from all our losses in free agency this past year. So with this, the Lions can do a whole lot. Now, they have every single pick in 2027 that they've not gained none, they have not lost one. They have their round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have all those picks. So, probably won't trade any of those picks if we do trade for them, and you'll probably do a swap if you do even entertain the 2027 NFL draft with the trades this year. But the 2026 draft is really where you're going to be looking at. Now, it really does hurt that we do not have a third-round pick, but the fact that we do have 2 fourth-round picks is kind of huge. The third and fourth-round picks are kind of the picks that you can do a lot with to get really good, decent players to where you're not overpaying or to where it feels like you're giving up too much capital. Because the first and second round picks feels like you're always giving up too much capital, but then the third and fourth round picks, it's like, okay, this is a pretty decent amount of capital, but at the same time, the team that's getting that capital is like, okay, this is decent, this is pretty decent in return, but it's also like you're getting a really good player with that capital that you're trading away to receive that player as well. So those are kind of the sweet spots as the third and fourth round picks. We now have a third, which sucks because it sounds like most teams are looking for third round picks for the talented players this year, not fourth round picks. But we do have 2 fourth round picks, so that is interesting. So those are some names on the cornerback market. Those are our projected picks. Now moving on to the defensive line, specifically defensive end. There are about 4 or 5 guys that come to mind. There are 3 that I am really looking at. We'll go off the 2 that I don't expect to happen first or even entertain. The first one is Jermaine Johnson. From what I've been hearing, the Jets are looking for at least a second-round pick for Jermaine Johnson. I would not give that to them whatsoever. Jermaine Johnson has not quite lived up to his first-round pick. He has shown a lot of flashes. I really liked him coming out of the draft in 2022. I really wanted the Lions to take him when they traded up to 12 before they took Williams. I really wanted the Lions to take him to pair with Aidan Hutchinson, but we did not end up taking him. And he's been a very decent player for the Jets, but he's also struggled to stay healthy, and he just hasn't really fully unlocked that next level of his game yet. Not a bad player, but I would not trade a second-round pick for him. To say we'd give up both our fourth-round picks, I would consider that due to the fact that he could be the long-term option off Aidan Hutchinson, and from his production and not being healthy all the time. Right now, he will not cost to extend him that much in the future as of right now. So if I had to predict a trade there that I would do, I would give them both the fourth-round picks and call it a day. But I do not think they would accept that for 2 reasons, because they probably don't think that's enough, but also that can be a long-term defensive end for them, paired with Will McDonald if he can end up staying healthy and unlock that next level of his game. Another player is Trey Hendrickson. Now, I heard some rumors before yesterday's games that if the Bengals were to lose to the Bears like they did, that they would be more willing to listen to offers for Trey Hendrickson. Now, they did lose, but they held their own against the Bears, and they should have won in one of the most miraculous games I've ever watched. But they did lose, so I'm assuming they will be listening to some offers at least now for Trey Hendrickson. And I've heard that they're going to want at least a second-round pick in return. Now, I know it's crazy to say, but the Lions can afford to get Trey Hendrickson now, because Trey Hendrickson, I'm assuming he's still looking for a 2 or 3 year extension next year when he's set to become a free agent, because the Bengals gave him a 1-year deal this offseason. A 1-year, was it a 1-year extension, or was it just I don't even think they gave him a 1-year extension. I think they just raised his salary by a considerable margin. I think they raised his salary by about, I'm going to say, $18 million or somewhere around there, to bring it up to like 32 or somewhere around there on the year. So the Lions are going to have to take on at least half of that, I would assume, if they were to trade for him. But we can afford to do that from how the Hutchinson contract has been set up and how much cap we have open right now. We can afford to do that. Now, if they're looking for at least a second-round pick, since ours is a round pick this year, I'm assuming they're going to want something else in return. And their defensive ends, they drafted Shamar Stewart in the first round. He was either going to be a hit-or-miss draft pick, and so far he's been a complete miss. Prior to this game that he had yesterday, I don't know what he did in that game, but he only had 1 tackle. That's it, no sacks. 1 solo tackle was all he had heading into this game yesterday. But they have him, not really been worked out so far. But they also have Joseph Asai, who has been pretty decent for them this year. And up the interior, they got some guys up there as well. They got TJ Slayton, and they got one of the more underrated defensive tackles in the NFL, in my opinion, and BJ Hill. So they're going to want a defensive end. Clearly, the defensive end market in free agency is not good, and your best option is really DeMarcus Walker or Shaq Barrett, and those guys are no better than a defensive end 3 or 4 at this point in their career. So the offer that I would give Trey Hendrickson, to get Trey Hendrickson to bring him to Detroit, assuming you're going to have to take on at least half his salary this year, I would give them a 2026 second-round pick and Marcus Davenport for Trey Hendrickson. Now, Marcus Davenport should be coming back from his injury sooner rather than later. That is a big-body defensive end that they don't really have. Shamar Stewart kind of is that, but Joseph Asai is an undersized defensive end, so they get a big defensive end. His game is kind of similar, Marcus Davenport to Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson is always more healthy, but also he's just a flat-out better player than Marcus Davenport. But they can get Marcus Davenport in return. Marcus Davenport will not really cost them anything, and he could get production for them for a low cost, and it's really just a throw in that deal to ease that deal through. Then you trade away your 2026 second-round pick, so you would not have a second or third-round pick, but you still keep both your fourth and your picks beyond that, as well as your first-round pick. So that's the Trey Hendrickson. We have reportedly called the Bengals about Trey Hendrickson multiple times, according to NFL rumors, but Diana Rossini, who's a legit NFL source, did put out we did call the Bengals at least about Trey Hendrickson. Now, I don't know if we're interested still, but that could be something to monitor. But Jaelan Phillips is the one I am really looking at when it comes to defensive end market. Jaelan Phillips is the one I'm praying for. I feel like he would be perfect for this Detroit Lions defense if you were not to trade Marcus Davenport, because Marcus Davenport can be your other big defensive end opposite Aidan Hutchinson. Now, Jaelan Phillips is not undersized, but he isn't like that big defensive end who's going to make a huge impact in the run game like Marcus Davenport and Aidan Hutchinson can. He is a defensive end who's going to flat out get you pressure, and that's what we need. Trey Hendrickson is a little bit of both. If you want a Trey Hendrickson, then Marcus Davenport's going to get lost. If you trade for Trey Hendrickson, Marcus Davenport, that's why you might as well just throw him in the trade. He's going to get lost once he returns. There's just no question. But with the Jaelan Phillips, he's going to cost you a lot less. He can be a long-term option, unlike Hendrickson, opposite Aidan Hutchinson. But also that leaves Marcus Davenport to still get playing time if you want to keep him. So Jaelan Phillips is very interesting. He's only 26 years old. In 2022, he was on pace to have one of the best defensive end statistical seasons that year, where he ended up, I think, having, 7 sacks in 8 games or somewhere around there. He was on pace to have one of the best seasons of any defensive end that year in 2022 before he got hurt. I think he tore his ACL that year. And then 2023 was a little bit down in the year, and then he got hurt again last year with a significant injury, and he's had a slower start this year where he has 3 sacks throughout 7 games so far this year. But Jaelan Phillips is the guy I'm praying for. He is my guy. Myles Garrett was my guy that I was praying for last year. Jaelan Phillips is the guy I am praying for this year, due to he can be a long-term option opposite Aidan Hutchinson for a decent little contract that won't cost too much. He'd probably get around the J-Mo type money. No, he'll get less than J-Mo. I would expect Jaelan Phillips to probably get $20 million a year as of right now. I would say anywhere from $15 to $20 million is what I expect Jaelan Phillips to get right now. So there's a chance he can become a long-term defensive end too, opposite Aidan Hutchinson for like a 3-year, $50 million deal. There's a legitimate chance you could do that, and he has so much potential. I can keep going on and on about how much potential Jaelan Phillips has from what he showed in 2022 and what he's done since coming out of the draft. Has shown so much potential. Really, really has. It's just a matter of, can he finally stay healthy, and with a legit defensive end opposite him and a legit interior, can he take his game to the next level like he did in 2022? That is really the question for me. And my proposed trade that I would offer the Dolphins for Jaelan Phillips, and I would give them a lot more than this, but I think this is kind of a decent little deal that I'm offering them here. They want a 3rd-round pick is what I've been hearing for Jaelan Phillips. We do not have a 3rd-round pick this year, and again, I'm not really messing with the 2027 draft picks because I don't think we would do that. My projected trade that I would offer them is our 4th-round pick this year and our 5th-round pick this year. I would give them not our compensatory 4th, our original 4th-round pick this year, and our 6th-round pick that we got from the Jaguars, and the Patrick trade for Jaelan Phillips. That is what I would do to get Jaelan Phillips. That is my proposed trade, and if that wouldn't go through, then I would give them both our 4th-round picks, and I probably wouldn't do any more than that. But the original fourth round pick, and the sixth round pick that we got from Tim Patrick in the trade with the Jaguars is what I would offer the Dolphins for Jaelan Phillips. So those are the defensive ends I'm looking at. And the defensive end market, some other names to potentially watch for is Cam Jordan. I'm going to be livid if we trade for Cam Jordan. He's so past his prime at this point. He's had an okay year so far this year, but he hasn't been that, number one, even really that good of a number two defensive end in almost 5 years to this point. Really, 2022 was the last decent year he had, and you can even go back to 2021. He's not been great in a long time. He's old. I don't really think he would fit us that well in the defensive line, our defensive line from how we play. I would be livid if we traded for Cam Jordan. I really would. That's the guy I'm looking for, though. Potentially Carl Granderson as well is the guy I'm looking for. Don't really expect him either, though. Kayvon Thibodeau, but I've heard the Giants are looking for a first-round pick for Thibodeau, which is beyond me. He's not showed up anything to be worth a first-round pick prior to this point. I understand he was, the 5th or 6th overall pick a couple years ago in 2022, but he has not played up to that standard at all. He's not bad, but he's not played at that standard at all so far. So I would not do that at all for Kayvon Thibodeau. And there are some other names to keep an eye out for, some potential shockers, but those are the guys that I'm really looking at so far. But my top 3 guys that I'm really taking a look at, and the top 2 guys that I really, really want to happen is Jaelan Phillips and Trey Hendrickson. But Jaelan Phillips is the guy that I'm praying and begging for this year. Last year was Myles Garrett. This year it is Jaelan Phillips. So, and then when it comes to the offensive line, there's not a lot of guys who are available this year. There's really, really not. I'm going to be honest, I really haven't even taken a look because I know there's not many available this year. When it comes to the offensive line, I'm looking at a player who can tackle and guard. That is what I am looking at. I know some guys out there that can do that. One is Cam Robinson. I know Cam Robinson can play guard and tackle. He's more of a tackle, but he can play guard. He's been tackled throughout the primary of his NFL career, but I'm sure he can play guard if needed. We should also be getting Miles Frazier back here sooner rather than later, so I do not think we will trade for offensive linemen. People forget that we're getting Miles Frazier back, and I honestly just forgot about that until I reminded myself here. He could be our starting guard if Mahogany is going to be out a while. But the guys that I look at are guards who can play tackle or tackles who can play guard. That way, say you trade for a tackle that can play guard, that tackle can come in and start for the next couple of games, let Decker heal up, and hopefully Decker's 95, 100% healthy after those couple of games, to where that tackle that you traded for, if he can play guard, can end up moving to guard to fill in for Mahogany until he comes back later in the playoffs. And then you kind of get a 2-for-1 there. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking at right now in the offensive line market. Again, there's not really a lot of guys available this year, but that's just kind of the type of player that I would keep an eye for. So those are Detroit Lions draft picks. Those are the players that I would look for at the Detroit Lions 2025 trade deadline. The other, obviously, positions like linebacker, tight end, running back, quarterback, all that, do not worry about. The Detroit Lions will not be going after that. I would say a sneaky potential candidate is wide receiver, if they want to get a big body wide receiver in there, because we do miss Tim Patrick a little bit this year. You can clearly tell. We don't really have that guy who can make some big plays in the middle of the field like we did with Tim Patrick last year. So I would say keep a look for wide receiver potentially. Obviously, I don't have any inside sources, but I would say keep a look for wide receiver potentially. For maybe we try to get Tim Patrick back. I don't know. Or maybe we try to get Josh Reynolds or something back for a late round pick, something like that, 6th, 7th round pick. Maybe do a pick swap for a wide receiver. Take potentially a slight look at that. There was some rumors, I think it was from Polymarket Football or something like that, or FanDuel or something like that, that we were interested in Rashid Shaheed. But I don't believe that it's true from what I've been hearing. But I think it was Polymarket Football did report that. So, I mean, maybe keep a lookout for that. But Rashid Shaheed, I'm sure, would fit us. I've watched his interviews and stuff like that. He plays, he would fit us. They can be a punt returner, kick returner. So I could kind of understand that. But I would say potentially keep a look at a wide receiver with potentially a pick swap or something right there to get a wide receiver 3, middle of the field guy who can make some big plays. So those are the guys I'm looking at. But specifically defensive end and defensive backs are where I'm looking at right now. But if I'm the Detroit Lions, this is a must defensive end. This is a trade for a must defensive end. That defensive end, hopefully, is Jaelan Phillips, and if not, hopefully it's Trey Hendrickson. Another guy that I forgot that is available in the defensive end market is Aidan from the Titans. Now, I do not want Aidan. I'm not interested in Aidan at all. He's severely undersized. I understand the Lions had him brought in for a visit in 2022. They did not end up signing him because he ended up going to the Titans. But I know the Lions did previously have interest in Aidan, but he's very consistent. He's going to get you 5-6 sacks every year, or 7 sacks, but he ain't going to get you no more than that. He's not a power defensive end. He's not great in the run game. So I just don't really think that would be a good fit from how we play right now. So not really taking a look at him. But he's another option out there in the defensive end market as well. So the guy that I really want this year is Jaelan Phillips. But we'll see. One pride, go Lions. The Lions need to make a move. This is a must-make move at the trade, in my opinion, for an edge rusher. If they don't go after an edge rusher, though, I want it to be a offensive lineman. I don't really want it to be a defensive back. I think we're fine in the defensive back room. I think if we're going to go after a defensive back, we need to do a free agency because there's still some talented guys left in the free agent market when it comes to DBs. Justin Simmons is still out there. Stephon Gilmore's still out there. Asante Samuel. So you still have some options in the defensive back room and free agency. So defensive end is what I'm looking at. Maybe you can take a look at interior defensive line too, is potentially a shocker, but I would not expect that one. If they are looking at interior defensive line, it's going to be an interior defensive lineman who could also play on the edge. So one pride, go Lions. Who do you want to become a Detroit Lion on any position that I've gone over in this video? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. One pride, go Lions. Hopefully 24 hours from now or whenever you're seeing this video, Jaelan Phillips is the Detroit Lion. I know I'm just going to get so excited on Tuesday just to be let down. But it's nice to dream, you know. One pride, go Lions.